Hi everyone, and welcome to Pro Tools Answers, where your friendliest Pro Tools experts on the internet demonstrate and elaborate on your Pro Tools questions put to the community in Avid's official Facebook support forum. Please welcome Anders Motz.
Hello.
Andy Hagerman.
Hello, hello.
And myself, Dave. We take you on a deep journey into the workings of Pro Tools technique and ethos to help the user community get the best out of Pro Tools. In this week's episode, we're looking at a question from one of our subscribers. If you want to be able to submit questions directly to us, you can come and join our Inner Circle, or maybe even join our Inner Circle Discord community as well and attend our Masterclasses every month. You can head over to protoolsanswers.com and you can subscribe over there. And we want to say thank you very much to John for his support. And here is his question. It's quite a long one, and there's a couple of parts to it. He wants to know a little bit more about mixing in surround 5.1 / Dolby Atmos. He does not have a speaker system at home. He only has a pair of studio monitors, Yamaha HS7s. I think Andy will agree with him that they're pretty good.
I love those.
Yep. It's got an appropriate Mac system, and he wants to produce an 8-track album. But here's some of the interesting things. The 8 tracks on the record are normally going to be stereo, but he wants a small part of the album to be, or some small parts of each of those tracks to be in either surround 5.1 or Dolby Atmos, just as a cool effect. I don't know what will be the best and easiest way for me to do that. Any advice here on how to do this? First, I was thinking that I should mix the surround part by itself in its own session, and then mix it in afterwards with the stereo track, which is going to be part of the bigger thing. Maybe the whole session should be mixed in surround or Dolby Atmos, and I think Anders would probably agree that that's the way to go, and Andy would agree that's the way to go. I want some sound, some surround ambient nature sounds with footsteps, snow, breathing, Arctic dogs. This is sounding like an amazing composition.
Not regular dogs, though.
Yeah, specifically very, very cold dogs. And some sea and some wind, and we're talking Foley here. So right. This is getting a little bit interesting. I'm of course going to be getting some good and relevant audio for this, either recording it myself or using some Foley tricks, sound libraries, etc. Will I have an issue when mastering all of these tracks together in the end? Do I need any special gear? Is my new Mac enough? Yes. Any new plugins or anything else? I hope this isn't too many questions in one go. Well, too late, John.
Apparently not.
Because it is.
First off, there's one wording there which we need to discuss. He asked, is it the best and easiest way? And those two things are two different
answers,
pair of shoes, right?
Yeah,
it's either the best way or it's the easiest way.
Indeed. So if we boil this down to a simple question, he wants to record an 8-track album. Some of the elements within that he wants to be surround, so it's going to have to be mixed in surround anyway. And he wants to include some Foley sound effect stuff alongside the music.
Right.
So what's he going to need, and how is he going to achieve these?
So the elephant in the room is his pair of speakers. And if you're going to monitor surround, you need to have obviously the right number of outputs, right? So and the speakers connected to them. You could go. There's a couple of different applications, Dolby being one of them, that can create a binaural mix, which basically is a headphone mix that simulates surround, right? It gives that sensation. It is headphones, which means it's you have to be careful when you're mixing with headphones. The other thing too is it will sound fine on your headphones, but that binaural mix coming through speakers will not sound fine.
So
binaural works.
Check it. Yeah.
Generally speaking, a binaural mix on speakers sounds like garbage because binaural is specifically for
you mean
headphones
that
only.
one? Okay, I thought you meant like the equivalent of that playing back on speakers will probably not sound the same.
But
so if you're mixing on headphones using a binaural mix, you'll have to check it on speakers. Yeah.
Right.
Or is he going to need 2 masters? Is he going to need one master for, say, Apple's spatial audio delivery, and then another master for listening on a home-based 5.1 Dolby Atmos system.
He
Great
might, but he
questions.
needs the monitoring before he can
Of course.
even get to the mastering,
Of
right?
course, there's no question.
But yeah, the different delivery formats. Typically speaking, not universally, but a lot of what he's talking about, the Foley sound effects and the Arctic dogs, that points me towards post-production. And post-production doesn't really master in the same way as music production does. So it sounds like he wants to do kind of like he wants to have all of the aspects of a stereo production and then interject, elements of surround and have them coexist together. And there are a few ways you can do that, right? I think Anders, we'll start off with Anders because we were just having the conversation earlier today. We were talking about Dolby, right? The Dolby Atmos format is great, and Anders is going to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so one of the solutions would be to mix the whole album in Dolby Atmos using the internal renderer. I suppose is the cheapest option here for you. And the one of the advantages of using the Dolby Atmos renderer is that it can generate all of the channel-based formats alongside of the Dolby Atmos mix, and also create a binaural headphone mix for use for people that want to hear your album in just using a couple of headphones. So as you say, you will need a couple of different mixes here. You'll need the full Atmos mix, you'll need the binaural headphone mix, which is a stereo file, which will sound good on headphones, as Andy said, but it will probably not sound good at all on speakers. So you'll need a separate stereo file as well. And the Atmos renderer will take care of all of those in just basically one go. But the downsides of the renderer is, of course, you have to invest a little money in the renderer, which is probably not as... It's really cheap right now. So if you're interested in renderer, you should go out and get it.
It's normally $300, but I found it in my Avid special offers tab for $80. So
there you go. So but that's
and
the
that's
easy
a perpetual
part.
license, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's the easy part, because learning the renderer and how to set that up and everything is quite a complicated setup, and it needs a lot of understanding of the renderer, and you need to invest a lot of time to get this working the way that you should. One of the advantages is you could probably get away with mixing the entire album just using your headphones and then going into a studio that has a 714 configuration to make sure that everything sounds good on speakers as well.
The other thing...
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, Andy, you go ahead.
The other thing, as far as investments go, is depending upon how extensive your mix is, that $80 for the render is great. But if you're running the renderer on the same computer that you're running Pro Tools, you could, depending upon how extensive your mix is and how many plugins and all the stuff you've got going on, you may hit a ceiling at that point.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of more serious Dolby work, serious in quotations, you have a separate computer with separate interfaces that's talking to the Pro Tools computer that's connected either by MADI or whatever. That's a more complex setup. It's also significantly more expensive than the $80 just to get the internal renderer, which may be fine, but it's also quite possible that you'll find yourself growing out of that system at some point.
Yeah, the internal renderer also seems to eat RAM memory for breakfast, so you need a lot of RAM to make this work. And I think the 16 gigs that you have available is a little bit too little to run the renderer. So Andy, you've got a great solution for how to do this channel based in Pro Tools. So how would you do this?
So I'm as high tech and really nice and powerful that Dolby is, and it is. There's a lot of stuff that's already in Pro Tools just waiting to be discovered, and this typically happens when somebody moves from being a stereo producer to being a surround mixer. Some features that weren't that interesting before become really significant, and one of those is a thing called subpaths. Now, an output path or a bus can be divided into subpaths. Now, for stereo, subpaths are practically meaningless because of those subpaths, you could have a left path and a right path, and that's what panning does, right? But once you start to get into 5.1 or anything beyond stereo, frankly, you can do things with subpaths that I think are going to be exactly what he wants, frankly. So let me show us a session here. It's an empty session. Okay, so here's an empty session and a Zoom screen. We'll get that off there. Get off there. There we go. And so what we have is the output tab and the bus tab, and I've cleared these both out just to make things easier. Now, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make your output path the largest channel configuration. Okay, so for example, if you're doing something that you want to have stereo sometimes, surround sometimes, let's say 5.1. Yep. The output path that you will create is 5.1, not stereo. Okay, so I'll go over here and I will add a new path. Boink. I'll go here and I'll create a 5.1 path. There we go, and we'll call this 5.1 out. Okay, boom. And I've created this, and I'm going to assign this to my channels. Obviously it has to match your speaker configuration, but right here we'll just leave it alone. Now, once you do this, a bus will automatically be created. Before, there was no buses in here. Now there's a bus, and this is a 5.1 bus that has been mapped to the 5.1 output. Okay? And if you see this little disclosure triangle, you can see here all of the different subpaths that are automatically created when Pro Tools creates an output bus. Now, just to make life a little bit less confusing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete these because I want to rebuild them from scratch. So all of these subpaths, I'm going to delete these. Boink, we're gone. So now we're just here with a single path with no disclosure triangle on it, right? So it's mapped. I could do surround mixing. Great, I could do stereo mixing, but I would have to do it with a surround panner. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let's go here and we're going to, I'm going to create for myself, let's see here. We're going to create for myself a stereo path. And I'm going to call this stereo mix. Okay, did I do that right? Stereo.
Seems to be missing a letter there.
Yes. Okay, so stereo mix, I'm going to create something else. Let's have fun. Let's say, back speakers. And that's going to be a stereo path too. Wait, but that's surround. Hold on. It's a stereo path. I'm going to create something because we've got 5.1. We've got that lovely subwoofer speaker there that is playing something from the LFE channel. So let's create a new path. And I'm going to create a mono path. I'm going to call this LFE only. We're going to create another path that's your center speaker. Now, this is a music project, but it has a lot of the same kinds of aspects as post-production. In post-production, dialogue traditionally comes out of the center speaker, a mono path. So we're going to go ahead and create that. So I'm going to do, and we'll call it dialogue for lack of a better term. Okay. Now, is there anything else that you want to be able to do, Anders or Dave?
Maybe LCR?
Okay, great. So LCR is left, center, and right. And I'll go ahead. I'll call that screen because again we're talking about post production kind of. So I'll do this and I'll call this screen. Great. Sorry, Dave. Did you have any others that you wanted to put in?
Because the only speakers we haven't dealt with now, if we we're talking 5.1, aren't we? So no, there isn't anything left really, is there?
Yeah, I think I did make a mistake, didn't I?
Well, everything's
a path. So
yeah, you would have done subpaths instead. Yeah,
I should have done subpaths. So let me guys, we can either call this an honest teachable moment and keep on recording.
No, I think we should edit this out and do it right.
Okay, so let me.
I'll do a jump cut into doing it right.
Okay, all right. So
just like that.
Delete these. Okay, so here I've got my 5.1 output with no subpaths because I've deleted them. I'm going to create new subpath, and I'll go ahead here. I'll create a stereo bus. We'll call this stereo mix. I'll create another one. We'll call this rear speakers, and because it's the rear pair, it's going to be, even though it's surround speakers, it is going to be a stereo path because we're talking about 2 speakers. And we'll call that rear. I'll create another thing, and it's going to go to just my lovely subwoofer speaker. So if I want to send something only to that, we'll call that LFE for low frequency effects, which is the name of the channel for that. And then I'm going to create a dialogue path. Now, typically speaking, for post-production, dialogue is panned in the center speaker, which is a single channel. So that is a single subpath, so a monopath, and I'm going to call that dialogue.
This is what he'd use for his lead vocal, right? Typically,
if you want to, yeah, or yeah, exactly. I mean, you could do. I mean, obviously, what I'm doing
album.
is it's a music album, but what he's doing has a lot of the same kind of flavors as a post-production project, right? Okay, and then one other thing, and I think Anders, you wanted to do this, go ahead.
The dogs can dialogue through the center speaker.
They can.
Yeah.
Or they can. If you're like sledding, they could be behind you.
Yeah, let's do an LCR as well, meaning left, center, and right speaker. And,
left, center, right. How many channels is that?
That would be 3.
It's 3, right? And those are the front channels. Again, let's pretend that this is a post-production one. So I'm going to call this screen, which is my traditional nomenclature for this. Now, so I've got those. Dave, do you want any others? Is there anything else that is jumping out at you?
I can't think of anything because we're in 5.1, so I think we've used up 5.1. We've used up all the available speakers.
I'm going to click create, and Pro Tools wants to help. usually it does a fairly good job, but
it's not done too badly. Actually,
it's made some good guesses, but sadly erring. So stereo mix, great. So we got left and right, great. Fantastic. So left is coming out of the left speaker, right's coming out of the right speaker. All is well with the world. The rear speakers, I'm going to have to do a little bit of dragging. So this is my rear surround, so right surround, and this is going to be my left surround. So that left goes to left surround. That right goes to right surround. LFE is going to go to the LFE channel, so I'm going to drag that over there. Dialogue, Pro Tools made a good guess here, so he's putting that in the middle, right? And then the screen, also they make the correct guess.
Yep.
Right? Now, is it a surround mix? If I want it to be, but the payoff comes here. So I'm going to click OK. Okay, and now what I'll do is I'll create for myself a track, and let's say I'm doing my stereo mix, right? So I'll go ahead and create a stereo, a mono track. I'll create 5 mono tracks, let's say.
While we're doing this, Andy, let's also create a master output as well.
Right. Yeah. Let's create a few. Let's create 3 master faders. Okay. And I know I'm creating mono. Wait till you see this feature that a lot of people don't know. So I'm going to go ahead here. We'll go ahead and just generically create these different master faders.
He's teasing us, Anders.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing something. So I've got these. Now let's say that these are the dogs. And the dogs, he wants them to come out of surround, but everything else is a music thing, and he wants that just to be, he wants to mix just like he's mixing stereo. Great. So the output of these 4 tracks, let's go ahead and select these, and Shift Option will do to all selected tracks. Most of you guys know that. And I'll go ahead and click the output selector, and you'll see here that I've got, in addition to my 5.1 path, which I could use, right? But I'm going to get that kind of complex surround panner. Instead, what I'll just go ahead, I'll just use stereo mix, and then, you know what I got? I got a normal panner, exactly the same way as I would normally pan for what I got here. Great, fantastic, easy, right? And then for the dogs, I'm going to go ahead and I'll create, let's say I want to keep it simple as well. I'm going to have those guys coming out of only the rear. And again, it's a stereo path, makes it super easy to pan, but it would be panning the back, left and right. Or if I wanted to move them around in a true surround way, I could do that. I could just go up to the main path. And now I've got this. but I don't have to deal with a surround panner unless I specifically want to. Now here's so it keeps your mix flexible, but as simple as you possibly can make it, right? So this is the opposite of Dolby, right? Dolby has tremendous power, but it is a fairly complex thing. This has a little bit less, but it's far less complex. Then we're going to go here, and let's say we'll call this the Stereo Master. Okay, and oh, but Andy, you made only mono master faders, you idiot. Right click, change track width. Boom. So I'm going to create a stereo, and it just changed. Okay, and I'm going to have this control that stereo mix. Now notice that now the choices that I have here are relatively limited because it's a stereo track. So it's only going to be able to control that subpath. So stereo mix 1, great. And now this becomes where I'm going to put my mastering. So if you want, you can master as if you were mastering music. You can master via that path. And then you can create another path that, let's say, is everything else, right? So I could go over here. I'm going to change the width. I'll go to 5.1. And that can be another point of control. Now, we do have a little bit of an issue because you can't have a master fader of 2 different channels. So what I probably would do is I would probably create another subpath that was everything except for the front stereo. That's the one path that I wouldn't. But it does give you the ability to simplify your mixing experience and also kind of give you the integration of multiple formats when you want to, but also to be able to separate things out when you want to. So to be honest, what I would probably do is I would create this stereo, and then I would create another 3-channel path that was the LFE, and then the rears as well, and that would be another subpath specifically for mastering. But beyond that, that's my workflow.
Yeah, and it really simplifies the mixing and everything. So how would you do this? I mean, this would obviously create a 5.1 wave file outputting from Pro Tools then, that the listener can listen to in his 5.1 setup. But what would you do if you wanted to print this to a CD or have someone listening to it on their iPhones or on their stereo setups at home?
Well, that's obviously, this is where we start to run into a different set of technical problems, right? So what are people going to be listening on? If they're listening on headphones, you could do a binaural mix and we're back to Dolby really for something like that, because we don't have a included binaural plugin. We do have one that will what's called Downmix. Plugin's called Downmixer, and it will create a stereo mix of a surround path, but you won't get that stereo effect. It will be purely stereo. You won't get the surround experience.
Exactly, but that's actually something, and this is where I wanted you to go, is that you can take this 5.1 material that you've mixed for, which is the ideal for someone to listen back to it, but you can at the same move in Pro Tools, you could use the Downmixer to get the combination of all of those tracks into a stereo wave file, where basically it will down mix all of the rear speakers and the LFE into the stereo track. Yeah,
and you basically there's a couple ways you can do it, right? One of them is to just bounce it as a stereo file, and there are, if you go into your preferences in mixing. Yeah. It's time to play. What tab is it in? And so right down here at the bottom of the mixing tab are your routing coefficients. Basically, this is the different settings, and you have some control over this as to how things will be folded down, right? That's one way to go. Another way to go, and I tend to gravitate this way just because of my experience, is with a plugin called Downmixer.
Okay, so this will be the Downmixer plugin, which in my case, since I've got a Dolby Atmos file open, will be a 712 Downmixer into stereo, where you can make settings to each of these speakers, how at what loudness they should be folded down. But actually, using this Downmixer for me personally is you need to know what you're doing. But using the fold down techniques, as Andy showed us in the setup preferences there, these are usually the standardized configurations on how much of the rears and the LFE should be folded into the stereo mix, and that usually follows a scheme that seems to work fine for at least for most post-production purposes.
I can't believe I don't have it installed. But the other thing too about this is the presets in this plugin are actually fairly useful, right? So a lot of them, these are your fairly standard coefficients. So if you did that, just go ahead and pop one of those guys. There you go. And this is, again, it applies something similar to your mix coefficients. The other thing that's cool about this, and this may actually apply to this particular question, you can automate this. So you could, if you really want to, get roll up your sleeves and get to work, you could actually, all of those plugin parameters could be automated as your session plays and as you go to different things. And you could even automate the mutes and the phases, although automate, changing phase in mid mix, I'm not sure.
Keeping it simple with Andy Hageman.
It's time to play.
I was just going to
complications.
And he thinks Dolby Atmos is too complex.
I have a question.
I don't. But I'm saying that there's advantages for both.
I have a question about the down mixer. How does because we've only got 5.1 at the moment defined. How does bounce dialogue deal with that down mixer? So you're folding it down to stereo, which is great. So it's outputting stereo. How does the buses work inside bounce dialogue?
Well, if you take a look, do me a favor and deactivate that plugin on that track.
Yep, sure.
You're gonna have to remove it.
Okay.
Okay. So without the plugin, you can see all those different channels, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So if you take a look at your meter on that DX track, if you go now to Downmixer, if you throw Downmixer on that track.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. So throw that on there, and now you can see it's actually become a stereo track. So it does that work for you. So that the output that it has is simply those two.
Awesome. So when you do a bounce, down the presence of Downmixer just turns it into a stereo, and when you want to turn it back into 5.1, can you just deactivate Downmixer, and it will?
No, you have to remove it.
It has to be removed. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because if I deactivate it, it's still a stereo track effectively, or it's stereo output effectively.
Okay.
So you need to get rid of it.
Okay. A quick note, because as you did something, Anders, I just realized what I had done wrong. Is the one track type that you can't put Downmixer on is a master fader.
Yeah.
So this is me being a big. I had a night last night. I'm not running out all my cylinders, but yeah. So you can't run Downmixer on a master fader. So you would have to create an aux. Yeah. Which that would be your submaster. Yeah. Anders picked up on that, I'm sure, immediately.
It took a little while for me to get
it. And discreetly kept quiet.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of these solutions are good, or has their advantages and their disadvantages. And certainly, if you're looking at the interest for Dolby Atmos at the moment, I mean, it might be worth checking that out.
$80, forget about it. You got to go.
Yeah.
$80. It's never going to be cheaper than that.
Yeah. So and looking at the interest, especially for Dolby Atmos for music right now, it's huge. I think, John, the question should be answered like, do it in Dolby Atmos, because that's the future.
Well, I tell you what, Anders. John is one of the subscribers. He comes to the Masterclasses, right? We could follow this journey with him during the Masterclasses.
Yeah, I'm happy to walk him through this. That would be really cool. Masterclass, yeah.
It's interesting. I think now's the time to invest. Because when Dolby Atmos was new, there's a lot of folks that were just kind of like, I'm going to wait to see if it's picked up by the different media, right? So if there's a lot of innovations that have come and gone, and they just simply haven't been adopted. So Dolby Atmos is released. It could have happened that nobody was interested. That isn't what happened. So it is now clearly being adopted as a standard. So if you have any interest in surround, you can safely invest in Dolby Atmos, in my opinion.
I think historically formats haven't caught on because the consumer systems are just too expensive. SACD, quad, at the time it was just too much, SVHS, it was just too much to get in. But people have got 5.1, 7.1 Dolby systems in their house now for watching movies. That stuff is already ready for us to listen to music on. So you're absolutely right. The adoption is now right
your
there.
Your iPhone can play back Atmos. Like
yeah, the iPhone can, Macs can, Windows can. Android we're a little bit fuzzy on, but
I mean, like I think it's arrived, right? I think that if you're on the fence going, I'm not sure, is it gonna catch on? It's caught on. I think the issue's been solved
completely. Yeah. Awesome. What a great discussion, you guys. Thank you very much. I hope that helps John, and I hope that helps a bunch of you guys as well. If you got a lot out of this video, you can hit like on it. Let us know. If you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, that helps us. I'm not going to lie. And if you hit the bell icon, you get notified every time we release videos as well. If you head over to ProToolsAnswers.com, we have a nice friendly blog site over there. All of our stuff is available free gratis. You just have to find a video, find a subject that you want, and then watch it. If you wanted to join our Pro Tools Inner Circle, our Pro Tools Answers Inner Circle, sorry, there's a couple of tiers, and you can check that out over there as well, and maybe you'll join us guys and the other subscribers in the monthly masterclasses. As I said, with any luck, we'll be following John's production journey through this, because this sounds really interesting. Otherwise, we all have to say thank you to Anders.
Oh, thank you.
We all have to say thank you to Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Dave. Thank you to you guys. This is Pro Tools Answers. We'll see you next time, and we're out.